Hello family, welcome to another Narc Survivor live video. In today's video, we do have a very interesting topic. And believe it or not, but this is actually one topic that I've never spoken about before. So this is my first time speaking about this. And I'm going to try to approach it from not only a spiritual perspective, but also from a logical standpoint and from my own research on psychology as well. Because as many of you may know, I have been studying this disorder for over 6 years. And for many years, I didn't really want to accept that there was a spiritual side to this. Because of course, that's something we can't see. It's not something that's visible. But despite that, after 6 years of research, now I am convinced that there is a spiritual side to this. And I do believe that the narcissist sold their soul. They sold this spiritual and immaterial side to them. The emotional and intellectual energy and intensity, which one might normally appreciate in certain works of art, certain performances, or even in a person, an experience. And this is the reason why they're always so miserable. It's like no matter what you do for them, it is never enough. They're never happy. You could give them the world. You could give them large amounts of money. You could take them on trips around the world and they will just take it all for granted. They won't even be grateful. They'll just be thinking like, yes, I've got this now, I've received it. Now what's next? Instead of appreciating what you have already given to them or what they are already experiencing. And I know this is something that so many people experience with narcissists. And this must be the most frustrating aspect about it. Because it's like no matter what you do, it's never enough. They're never happy. They're never satisfied. And yet we look at it, we try to see it from their point of view, and it's like, if someone came into my life and did that for me and gave me everything that I've given to you, I would be very happy. And I wouldn't have this sense of arrogance and entitlement to where I'm expected even more. I would be surprised enough that they even gave that much. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that. And it's like, how can they be so empty, so dissatisfied after everything you have done for them? And of course, the reason why, and this is from a psychological perspective, based on psychological facts, it's because they do have a void inside of themselves. And based on psychology, the reason why they have a void is because when they were a child, they abandoned who they really are. They abandoned their true self and created a false self. And this is based on psychological facts. It even explains this in the DSM-5. So we know this already. They did abandon their true identity and they created a false self. And if you look at that from a spiritual perspective, if that's not selling your soul, what is? And it's not just that they abandoned their true self and created a false character. It could also be for money or for some advantage. So what exactly are they doing when they do that? Of course, what they're doing is they are seeking power and control at the expense of love. At the expense of love for themselves and who they actually are. And also love for other people. Instead, they chose to abandon that and create a false self to seek power and control. The problem is, this power and control comes from the external environment. It comes from other people or things, which means that it's not real. It's not generated from within. They can't generate their own power or energy. They can't regulate their own emotions. They need you to be an extension of them. They need you to act as an external regulator, as their life source, their life support machine, to help them to survive emotionally. And why is that? Why do they need to be linked up to you? Why do they need to be a leech, a parasite, a bottom feeder, the scum of the earth, the lowest of the low? Why do they need to be that? And of course, it's because they can't regulate their own emotions. They're weak, they're powerless, they can't generate their own energy from within because they abandoned their true selves and created a false character, which requires unlimited attention, admiration, and validation. The irony is that even when they receive that, it's never enough. They always need more. They're never satisfied. You give them a compliment and they might be quite excited in that moment, but it's very fleeting. It doesn't last for long. And they can't experience emotional depth. If someone gives us a compliment or if they give us anything, whatever it is, we can really appreciate that on a very deep level. And it inspires us to want to give back to them. We feel compelled to reciprocate those who have done or given things to us. Because we have a soul, we have something inside of ourselves. We have something to give. But with the narcissist, no matter how much you pour into that cup, it's like there's a hole at the bottom, it just leaks out. So they never feel full, they never feel satisfied. So you could give them the world, you could buy them a house, a car, take them on trips around the world, give them tons of money, it doesn't make a difference. At the end, they're still going to feel like you never gave them anything, and they may even say that to you. And then they'll have their hands out, they will still be expecting more, they will be very entitled, they will blame you for everything, they will act like you never did anything for them, they will complain. And you got to look at it like, why? Why are they reacting in that way? And of course, it's because they can't be satisfied. They have these insatiable desires that can never be fulfilled. And that is why the last thing they want is to see you satisfied. Because they've sold their soul. They abandoned their identity and created a false character in the pursuit of power and control at the expense of love. So they don't just want to sit back and watch you partake and experience in things where you can experience deep fulfillment. And they just have to be the observer, or they have to hear about it, or they just have to know in the back of their minds that you've gone off and that's what you're doing when they're not around. It eats away at them because they're using you as a reference point. So you have to be down so that they can feel up. They have to elevate themselves at other people's expense. That's just what happens when people sell their souls. When a person sells their soul, they cannot rise up with you. They have to bring you down. They have to try to make you miserable. And of course, yes, this is the work of the devil. This is what the devil does. The devil will grant you power and control at the expense of love and at the expense of any form of deep connection or intimacy, or even being able to be satisfied or appreciate anything that you have. And this is why they can have everything and still be miserable and still be envious and jealous of you. Because they know that even if you had a fraction of that, you could be far more satisfied than them. That's why that is the last thing that they want to see. They don't want to see you having anything, because it's just going to remind them of the fact that they couldn't be satisfied. But this is just what happens when a person sells their soul. When they seek power and control over love, they can't be happy with anything. And in fact, it's like the only thing that brings them joy is when they can bring someone down, when they can make someone else feel miserable. So this is exactly what they've done. They have sold their soul. And this is a choice that they made a very long time ago. When we are children, we are given certain choices. We can choose what path we're going to take. And yes, this is supported by psychology as well, which states that the narcissist abandoned who they really were in childhood and created a false character. They made a choice to do that. They made a choice to seek power and control over love for themselves, for who they actually are. And that resulted in them having to dominate other people, manipulate and abuse them, to validate this false character and the illusion, the facade. Just like the devil. I mean, the devil is a liar. He is a manipulator. He's deceptive. He tempts, he entices, he lies, he future fakes. And the narcissist is very much the same. They share the same traits, and that is no coincidence. How could it be that this was written in holy books thousands of years ago? And now we have this psychology research, and the narcissist is essentially just the devil in human form. Because yes, they are possessed by this demonic spirit. It's taken control of them. But even then, it is still a conscious choice. They are choosing to continue on this path. And there are self-aware narcissists on YouTube. I've even done an interview with one myself. They are out there, and somehow, I don't know about this, I can't even explain it myself, but somehow they do manage to get their soul back. But funny enough, and I've noticed this every time, so maybe I do know after all, and this is supported by psychology as well, the fact that a narcissist will typically become self-aware and even develop empathy and compassion for other people only when they are in a crisis. Typically when they've lost everything. They've lost their business, their money, they've lost their family, their friends. That's when they become self-aware. That's when they become more empathic. That's when they appear to have regained their soul. So it's almost like in some way they ended the contract with the devil. They may have sold their soul at some point, but then it's almost like they gave up everything. They threw it all away, and then they came back. And honestly, it's the most incredible thing of how this can even be possible. Because most people assume that once you've sold your soul, there is no going back. But it seems that there is actually a price to pay to regain your soul. And by doing that, they then find happiness and fulfillment in the smaller things in life. Instead of trying to achieve everything and have everything and do everyone wrong and still be miserable with everything that they have. So yeah, it's an incredible thing. And especially for me, when I got the chance to interview a self-aware, diagnosed covert narcissist. I mean, he didn't even seem like a narcissist at all. He seemed very patient, empathic, compassionate, understanding. So it's almost like he regained his soul. And I've spoken to him outside of the interview as well. And he explained how he found God and how he feels like he has developed empathy. And this was after he went through a crisis and his family and friends turned against him. They didn't want to support him anymore. So it's very interesting how this happens. And from watching the videos by other self-aware narcissists on YouTube, I've noticed a pattern. This seems to happen to all of them. But don't get your hopes up. The odds of the narcissist regaining their soul is highly unlikely. Most of them never will. They won't even have a reason to, because they will continue on their path, manipulating everyone, enforcing their enablers and flying monkeys. So as long as they have them around, that is going to prevent them from ever regaining their soul, ever finding God, and ever experiencing true happiness, fulfillment, love, intimacy, and a deep connection. So in many ways, their smear campaigns and gang stalking are actually more of a disadvantage to them than anyone else, which is really ironic when you think about it. But yeah, this is a choice that they made in their childhood. And there is evidence, it's a fact, that children, even at the age of 3 or 4 years old, they know exactly what they're doing. They are self-aware. They can make a conscious choice. And if you can remember any memories from back then in your life, I'm sure you will remember a time when there was a choice that you could have made. Or maybe you did make a certain choice and you felt guilty and you never made that choice again. So you see, yes, children, even at that age, are self-aware. They do know what they're doing and they can make a conscious choice. And the narcissist made this choice a very long time ago in their childhood. And although, yes, they may have had opportunities to turn it around, because as human psychology states, these personality disorders are not fixed until typically the age of 16 or 18. So they had many opportunities to change, but they chose not to. They chose to continue on their path. They chose to sell their soul, to give up on love, especially self-love, because they believed that they weren't good enough as they are. And then they created a false character, and often even a network of enablers and flying monkeys, along with their sources of supply as well. And this is all just to keep them trapped. It's potentially the work of the devil to keep them stuck, to prevent them from waking up, becoming self-aware, and realizing that the behavior is harming them, it's self-destructive. And also from preventing them from regaining their soul. And I believe that God has allowed the devil to do this, because in many ways it does seem quite fair as well. I mean, if it was up to the devil, he would probably just snatch our souls. It's not going to be a situation where we get to sell our soul to him. So of course, I do believe that God is involved as well. And he's given this opportunity, he's given us free will on whether or not we choose to sell our soul to the devil, to seek power and control, and be in our ego at the expense of love and of possessing our soul. And what makes it even more fair is that it's like at any point in our lives, we do have the opportunity to find God and regain our soul. We do have the opportunity to do that, and that makes it very fair. It seems that this is typically during a crisis that this happens. So it's like whatever it was that they attained through the use of this false character, they have to lose it all, they have to give it all up. Or they have to expose themselves at the very least, and everyone has to be aware of it. Everyone has to know what's going on. And then they can make their own choice, their own decision on whether or not they choose to participate with this person. Myself, I do believe that everyone deserves a second chance. And if they have found God, they've regained their soul. Even though they may have done some bad things in the past, if they're trying to correct it, and they're trying to pay their dues, I believe that person deserves support. I do believe that because God is merciful, God is forgiving, and we should live in his image. So that's my personal belief about it. And that's why I decided to do an interview with the self-aware, diagnosed covert narcissist. But most narcissists, they're not going to regain their soul. They're not going to find God. And they will go to hell. Of course, they will go to hell. Because you're not going to go to heaven without a soul. You're not going to go to heaven when all you've done all of your life is seek power and control and dominate and intimidate other people at the expense of having love and compassion. Of course, someone like that is not going to go to heaven. They are going to go to hell. And that's just how it is. And it's a choice that they made, a conscious choice. And they're given many opportunities to change. No matter how many chances you give them, they will always show you why you made a big mistake. This is why they can't be happy with anything. Even the simplest things, the easy things that we get in life, they can't even be happy with that. It's like you can't just sit on the grass with a narcissist and watch the clouds go by, to where you're just holding hands, you're looking in their eyes, you're expressing your love and devotion. You can't do that with them. It's got to be all about money, power, and unlimited success, because that's all they care about. Excessive attention, admiration, and validation, all for themselves, and they do not want to give anything to you. So you can't enjoy the simplest, easiest little things in life with the narcissist, because they have sold their soul. They're in pursuit of power and control at the expense of love. And because of that, they want to dominate and control us. They want to contaminate us. They want to make us impure. They want to deprive us of our innocence. And yes, in the moment, maybe they are able to do that, but it doesn't last for long. We're able to get it back, because we do have a soul. So we can't do things like that. We can't do that to them. But they can do that to us. And they can do it to us many times, even knowing that it's been done to us many times before. They will just repeat it again and again to no end, because they don't have a soul. So they need us to be their external regulator, their life source. They need to deprive us of our energy, because they can't generate it from within on their own. And this is why they are the way that they are. This is how they ended up that way, to where they're always miserable and dissatisfied with everything. And you just got to look at it like this. What are the odds that they're going to find someone else like you again? Someone else who gave them everything that you did. Someone else who tolerated them, put up with them. All of the arguments and fights that never seem to end. They're not going to find someone like that ever again. They're not going to find a chosen one, an empath. Just look at everything that you did for them. And they were still miserable. They took it for granted. They weren't grateful. They didn't appreciate it. So even if they do find someone else who is able to provide that amount of validation, tolerance, resources, whatever it is, even if they do find someone else who was able to do that, you can already be sure that they're not going to be satisfied with it again, because they weren't satisfied with that with you. And yet they will run off and they will portray this illusion of how they're so much happier without you. They've moved on, they found someone else, they're living their best lives. Of course, that's all a lie. Because if that was the truth, then they could have been happy with you. They would have been satisfied with everything you did for them, with everything that you were given to them. But they weren't. It's like no matter what you did, it was never enough. And to me, this is a clear sign of the disorder. This is a clear sign that someone has sold their soul. Because it's like, how could they not be happy? How could they not be satisfied with who you are as a person and what you were doing for them? Why did they have to dominate and control you, objectify you, treat you as an extension of themselves? Why did they have to exploit you, use you, lie to you, future fake, gaslight you, devalue you and discard you? Why did they have to do all of that? And of course, the reason why is because they couldn't generate their own power and energy from within. They lost the spiritual and immaterial side of them. This energy that they would otherwise have. So now they have to act as a leech, a parasite, a bottom feeder, and get that from you. And the only way they can get that is from bringing you down. That's their idea of fun. That's what brings them joy. But even then, it's nothing in comparison to what we get to feel, even from just the little things in life. And just as an example, a narcissist could have a fleet of private jets, super yachts, mansions around the world, tons of money in the bank, designer clothes, supercars. They could have it all. They could have all of the men or the women, whatever they like. And you, well, you could just be living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment. You might not even have a car. Maybe just take the bus. And you can just go and sit on the beach, play in the sand, look at the sea. And you could be finding more fulfillment in that than they can find in everything that they have. Believe it or not, that is actually the truth. And to know that, you've only got to look at celebrities who have quite clearly sold their souls. Look at how many of them have all of these addictions. They are addicted to alcohol, drugs. They're addicted to excessive attention, quite clearly. They're attention whores. And many of them end up depressed, even suicidal. Some of them take their own lives. And why do they do this? It's because despite all of their millions or even billions and all of their fans, they still can't find fulfillment. Because that's meant to come from within if you do actually have a soul. If you didn't sell it to the devil. They did. And by selling their soul, it typically results in excessive consumption, to where all they're doing is thinking about themselves and what they want in that moment. They're not thinking about anyone else or what they can do for them. And that's what causes them to continue on that path, because they are seeking satisfaction and they assume that they just need more. They're very egotistical. The ego always wants more. The soul is satisfied with what it has and wants to give and share to other people. So this is why they are the way that they are. That's very sad, but before you feel sorry for them, remember they have made a conscious choice. They had many opportunities to change and they chose to continue on that path. They chose to do that. Remember, God is merciful and forgiving. They can be given another chance, but they chose not to take it. And that's why they're so mad. That's why they're so miserable. And that's all their fault. Because that is the life that they chose. They chose that by themselves. They chose to seek power and control at the expense of love. At the expense of having compassion for you. Now let me know what you think about what I've said so far in the last 30 minutes. Because yes, this is my first video on this topic, talking about how the narcissist has sold their soul. So I'd love to hear from you down below in the live chat. Let me know if you have any questions or anything that you have to say about this topic. I will read it out and respond to it. Levy Ray says that's not true. Narcissism is not a choice. It's a human condition. Psychology does state otherwise. Psychology states that narcissism is a conscious choice. They do know what they're doing, and they understand the effects that it's having on their victims. And just to know this, because the cluster B disorders are very distinct in comparison to other disorders such as the cluster A's or cluster C's. The main difference and what completely separates them, and keep in mind that NPD is a cluster B disorder where they do know exactly what they're doing and they understand the effects that it's having on other people. Yes, NPD and cluster B disorders, they are fully aware. They know that what they're doing is wrong. And what proves this is that when they're doing something, if an authority figure was suddenly present, they would immediately stop. They would immediately self-reflect and realize that what they're doing is wrong. And they would already know that what they're doing is wrong before that, but then it would really cause them to stop their actions. Because they do know that what they're doing is wrong. If they didn't know that what they're doing is wrong, then even if an authority figure was present, they would still continue. And that would mean that they don't have NPD, they're not highly narcissistic, and instead they must have a cluster A or cluster C disorder, where they lack self-awareness, they don't really understand what they're doing, they're not really making a conscious choice, they're just kind of in the moment. So that is what separates them. And yes, it's already understood that NPD, narcissistic traits, they differ from many of the disorders where they do actually know what they're doing, they understand. Sylvester says, narcissists are demons in human skin. Yeah, I never wanted to accept that, but after all of my research and my experiences, I do believe that they are taken over by a demonic spirit. And it's because they have sold their soul. And they did make a conscious choice to do that. Lorena asks, is there any hope for them when you know it's the choice they keep making? Honestly, that's not going to make a difference. Even if you know that they have sold their soul and that they're making a conscious choice, that they could choose otherwise, remember they lack empathy. They have an inability to share, feel, or understand your experience. They can't put themselves in your shoes. They can't feel what you feel. So there's no incentive for them to change because they're just all about themselves. It's all about what they want, what they can get, what they need. It's not about you. So it has nothing to do with what you know or what you think of them. They're still going to continue to be that way. Lizzie says, I believe the person that traumatized them holds their soul. I most definitely do not believe that, because just look at it like this. People who traumatize other people, do you really think they had a soul to begin with if they were able to do that? When you have a soul, that is this thing inside of you that stops you, because you know, you understand that what you're doing is wrong. Narcissists know that what they're doing is wrong, they just don't care. So they continue to do it because there's nothing inside of them that's really telling them that they shouldn't, because they justify it. They know that it's wrong, but in their minds, they're the exception because life is so unfair to them, because you did something to them. There's always some excuse. Every abuser has an excuse, but there is no excuse for abuse. But this is what they do, they justify it. They're in denial. Deep down, they do understand that even though they're doing it, it's still wrong. But they try to bury it down and ignore it. But this is why there's shame-based people who are doing everything they can to avoid reflecting on their shame. Because at some level, yes, they do understand that what they're doing is wrong. Lorraine Diane says, spoiled as a child, got everything, so expected everything as an adult. Yes, that's typically what happens. If they're spoiled as a child, typically that can result in them developing narcissistic personality disorder. That's actually one of the main conditions that can cause them to develop it. That's often what creates a narcissist and their arrogance and entitlement and their delusions of grandeur. Because no one ever told them no when they were a child. If they wanted something, they got it. And they ignored anyone who didn't let them have what they wanted and chose to surround themselves with enablers instead. People who allowed their behavior to continue. And so they grow up as an adult, expecting everyone to get down on their knees and do whatever they want whenever they want them to do it. So yeah, that is a big part of the problem. And this is why I highly advise against spoiling your child. I mean, you may have been neglected in your childhood, so you may want to give your child everything. But that's the worst thing that you can do. Because psychologists understand that this is one of the main conditions in the childhood environment of a child who ends up becoming a narcissist, being spoiled. Because that's what narcissists are like. There's no limits, no boundaries. They just feel like they're entitled to anyone and anything, however they want it and whenever they want it. That's how a narcissist thinks. And no matter what you give them, it's never enough. And I guess for a lot of children, that's also an incentive for them to sell their soul on whether or not they choose to be receptive to the spoiling. And I mean, you just got to look at it like when people say spoil a child, just look up the definition of spoil. It tells you everything you need to know. The definition of spoiling something is to ruin it. So when you're spoiling a child, you are ruining them, damaging them, breaking them. I'm just looking through the live chat here. Seeing if there's any questions. CNS32 asks, to what extent does transference exist in most cases? I found myself thinking strange thoughts that weren't my own when around the narc, like implantation. In all honesty, I don't actually know what transference is or means, so I will have to look that up in the dictionary. I research new words every day, but I'm not familiar with that one, transference. So you'll have to let me know what that means. But as for thinking strange thoughts that weren't your own when around the narcissist, that's something I've experienced as well. And from a spiritual perspective, yes, it is the collective consciousness, and you can take on the thoughts of the collective. Remember, everything is energy. So if someone is having a certain thought, that thought is energy. And it can be picked up, it can be absorbed. Especially if there are a number of people thinking the same thought at the same time, then that can have a very powerful influence on you. Unless you have very good discipline surrounding your thoughts and you're able to control them. Michael O'Hara says, shout me out, please. Hello, Michael. Welcome to my live video. And I can see we got 243 live viewers and only 50 thumbs ups. So please show your support down below. It will take you 2 seconds to hit that thumbs up button. It helps the YouTube algorithm to get this message out there to other survivors. Trina says, I truly believe that it is a spiritual thing, a battle between good and evil in the human heart and mind. But I do believe that it can be curable. Yes, I believe the same thing. It is a battle between good and evil. They feel unloved, they feel like they're not enough. So they choose evil in the pursuit of power and control and at the expense of love. But yes, I also agree that it can be cured, just as they made a conscious choice to sell their soul. They can also make a conscious choice to pay the price of regaining their soul. But again, that is their own choice to make. We can't make that choice for them. CNS32 says about transference, that word that I didn't know or understand. But yeah, CNS32 says it's my term for when they shift their stuff onto you via projection. They try to make you them. It's invasive energy. I'm highly receptive to it. Yeah, that's right. A narcissist will try to get you to align with their ideals and what they want for you to go along with their feelings, wants and needs. And that's typically known as the victim being viewed as a narcissistic extension. So you're just an extension of them. And in the beginning, when they're love bombing you, they may view you as a positive extension of them. But then when they begin to devalue you, they disown these parts of themselves that they don't like and assign them to you. They project their insecurities onto you. They shift the blame, they gaslight. So yeah, if that's what transference is, then yeah, that's what it is. They're viewing you as a narcissistic extension. Walter Renato de Andrade Pontes, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but he says, why do narcissists drive chosen ones to commit suicide? Now that is a very interesting question, and I do actually have the answer for that. Because as many of you may know, I attempted suicide myself in the past. And I am a chosen one myself. Committing suicide is a sin. And if you do that, you will pay the price in the next life. When I attempted suicide, I had hallucinations, I was unconscious, and I had these nightmares, these visions of demons, and they were attacking me, they were trying to take me away, and I do take that as a sign, as though what I was doing was wrong. And this is why narcissists want to drive you to commit suicide, because at some level, they unconsciously understand that that can also drive you to hell if you do commit suicide. It won't if they are the ones to kill you, and that is why they typically don't murder their victims. Instead, they try to nudge you to suicide instead, because they've already sold their soul. They know they're going to hell, and they don't want to be alone in their misery. They want to bring you with them. So that's what their behavior is designed to do. It's meant to bring you down with them, because they don't want to see you going to heaven. But as long as you maintain your innocence, and again, that is a conscious choice as well. They can't strip you of that completely. But as long as you do that and you don't sell your soul and you don't commit suicide, but really if you are a chosen one, it may not even be possible. If you try to attempt suicide, they're just going to throw you back here again, because I don't think you're really allowed to do that. But then at the same time, I don't advise jumping off a building, because if you do that, then it is unlikely that you're going to survive, that they're not going to be able to pull you back in. Or what could happen as well is that you may shift timelines, and then we're getting into very complex stuff when we're talking about shifting timelines and alternate realities. So I don't really want to go down that road. I don't really want to talk about too much about that. But yeah, let's just leave it there. That is typically why they try to drive the chosen ones to commit suicide. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button down below if you're finding this video helpful. Thank you. Camojello asks what to do when you really love and care deeply for a narc. I would recommend to identify that although you think you love and care for them, that's actually just a false character. I mean, you got to look at it like, how can you really love someone who quite clearly doesn't love you? I mean, if you love yourself, you're only really going to love people who do love you. Those who aren't harming you, who aren't abusing you. Because if you love those who don't, then you're kind of showing a lack of self-love. So I don't really believe that we can love a narcissist. But although you may think that you do, honestly, the best thing that you can do is to go no contact, because then you're giving them the opportunity to self-reflect and grow, although they may just run off and find new supply. But if they're ever going to change, they're going to do that when they're alone, when they're not around you or other people. So that's one way that you can give them an opportunity to do that, to where they may try to regain their soul, because then they might be in a crisis if you do choose to leave them alone. Anyway, I can see that there are still quite a lot of questions. But I do have to set aside some time now to work on some videos that I will be uploading very soon. So I'm sorry I couldn't answer all of the questions, but let me know in the comments section if you do have a question that you would like to ask, and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. Also, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up down below. Hit the subscribe button and click all notifications so that you will be notified when I upload a new video. And if you would like to donate to the channel, you can leave a super chat or a super thanks in the comment section, or you can donate through my PayPal. It is paypal.me/Narc Survivor. You can also book a one-on-one with me on my website. It is narcsurvivor.co.uk. And you can follow me on Instagram. It is Narc Survivor YouTube. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for your support. I do appreciate you all, and I look forward to speaking with you again in another live video very soon.